Tide, and welcome to Crimson Tide Rewind, live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. It's presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, who reminds us, don't wait, vaccinate. Welcome, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover, alongside former Crimson Tide linebacker Cory Reamer. And Cory, it is good to see you here. Thank you, Jenny, for the crowd support that we definitely love each and every Monday night here at Baumhower's. We missed the highlighters.
I know. She texted me today, said they weren't going to be able to make it. They're going to be heading out to Texas A&M here soon. So missing the show tonight. We're definitely missed their enthusiasm.
Well, we did not miss a great performance from the Crimson Tide because we saw Alabama on both sides of the ball look pretty sharp in a 40-17 win against Mississippi State on Saturday.
Yeah, it was. It was good to see. It was a great game by the Crimson Tide. You know, we keep building on each week. We just get a little bit better at a lot of different positions, and this week was definitely one of those moments. We saw our offense come out there, and Jalen Milroe, a little early stumbling blocks, but he ended up getting settled in and looked pretty efficient. He did a lot of the good things with his feet. It seems like some of the play calling is starting to get geared more to the strengths that we know that he can do, not asking him to do too much. And so that was good to see, but the defense definitely stepped up in a big way. They looked really good. Created 3 turnovers, and we're flying around and getting pressure all over Will Rogers. We talked last week about what Will Rogers brings, to this Mississippi State team. And, being honest, this is not a good Mississippi State team. What I was the most impressed with is that we went out there and took care of business, and that included getting after Will Rogers, forcing him into 3 turnovers, limiting to him, I think it was 100 yards passing, maybe a little bit more than that. So they did their job, which was great. And the defense looked really good. I thought we got a lot of pressure up front, and both sides of the football for Mississippi State were just a little undersized. And when you have these type of opportunities, this is what you expected Alabama to go out there and do with the talent that we have on both sides of the football. Go out there and take care of business, control both lines of scrimmage. And I thought we did that all night. It was good to see, and it was good to go in there. It's a tough place to play, tough environment. It's always a tough game for us because they're just a physical group. And so it was good to see that we showed up and weren't bothered by all the cowbells. And like we said last week, the best thing you can do is put points on the board early to shut the crowd up, and we did that. We did that in a big way. So it's a good win, and now we get to turn our focus to a team that's going to be, another road game that's going to be a really tough test for us.
Certainly will be. Alabama now 4-1 on the season, 2-0 in SEC play. We also saw a fired-up Coach Saban on the sidelines.
Yes.
And it sounds like Cory, Miss Terry's to thank for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I whatever it takes. Yeah, we've all been waiting for it. And there's a lot of questions about how he's able to coach these days with so much, with the NIL and the transfer portal, and people are speculating that he's not able to go out there and really get after his players like he used to. And hey, thank you, Miss Terry, because we were all excited. It was the highlight of the game. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 times. It was the entire game.
Even late in the game.
Yeah, late in the game. You always remember, everybody remembers the moment that A.J. McCarron goes in a backup role, and the game's obviously in hand, and he goes out there and makes a few mistakes. He's coming off the sideline, and Coach Saban's just digging in him from about the numbers all the way to the bench. And you'll never forget that moment when Coach Saban's there, and you start to see a little bit of that this weekend. It's exciting. The fans want to see it because, we know that you've got to coach these guys up, and some of these players just need a little kick in the behind to get going. And it was fun to see. When I was watching the game, I was screaming more about Coach Saban. I was more excited about that than I was anything else that we did on the field. So maybe he's turning a corner. He feels good about this team. That's what this team needs, is just a little extra push, and not trying to tell them how great they are and all that other stuff. Let's challenge them a little bit and see if they respond.
Certainly was fun in Starkville on Saturday. We hope to have fun in Bryan College Station coming up on this Saturday as well, as Alabama takes on Texas A&M. We'll talk about that. Really anything related to Crimson Tide football we will talk about tonight, and we invite your phone calls. Give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline. 877-202-BAMA is the number to dial. We're just getting started for the next hour of Crimson Tide Rewind, again presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Tied into the left side for Alabama on 1st and 10 from their own 47. Milroe tucks it, runs, a lot of room, 45-40, foot race, 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown Alabama. Jalen Milroe, 53 yards, and the Crimson Tide gets on the board first.
Chris Stewart on the call of Jalen Milroe's touchdown that started the scoring, eventually led to 40 points for Alabama in Starkville on Saturday. A reminder, you can keep up with everything Alabama with the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app presented by Cadence Bank. It's available at the App Store and Google Play. Download the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app now for free. That was one of my favorite plays of the night. 53 yards and Jalen basically untouched.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of that actually from him for the rest of the night. Saw 2 touchdowns with his feet, but you know, I think that's one of the things that he's gotten more confident in. He's early on in the season. You saw him getting a lot of pressure in the pocket, and he wants to make the play with his arm, and he's not really willing to take off with his feet as quickly. But as this season has progressed, you can tell he's not afraid to get a couple reads in. If he starts feeling pressure in this see parts right in front of him, he's not afraid to take it, you know, and he goes, you saw what he can do with his speed and with his athletic ability. It's hard for defenses to bring him down. And that's one of the things that we always talk about facing for our defense, you know, mobile quarterbacks, how difficult it is for a defense to stop them. And now he can be that guy for defenses that we're trying to face. We've got a lot of talent at wide receiver and tight end, running back. We know what we've got out there. But the one thing that you can't account for is a quarterback that can really get out in space and make a lot of plays. And we saw what he's able to do. If they're going to give you the running lanes, their defensive line is going to rush past you and open up the middle of the field. Linebackers are dropping in coverage. You've got 15, 20 yards of open space. Why not take it? Because you can do a lot with it. You know, it's just as good as throwing the ball down the field. If you're taking off and running for 53 yards and a touchdown, what's wrong with that? And I think he's doing a lot more of that. He's got, we saw it throughout the game. Every time that I felt like that any type of pressure was coming his way, he was taking off and making plays. And I think that's probably a lot to do with what we've seen through these first few games of just trying to hang in there too much and getting sacked. And coaches are encouraging him like, hey, man, you can run. We're not telling you that you can't. Go out there, lower your shoulder, and it creates that one person that you can't account for from a defensive side of the ball for taking off and running, because you can't. It's hard with as much talent as we have on the edges. You can't leave somebody every down to spy. And even if you do, good luck finding an athlete that can get this guy on the ground, because he's one of the fastest guys on Alabama's team.
He really is, and then throwing the football as well continues to be really efficient. We talked about last week, only 4 incompletions against Ole Miss, and he only threw the ball 12 times this game, but completed 10 passes, 164 yards, and no interceptions.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. He's taking care of the football a lot better in the last few weeks. But, you know, you look at his stats, like you said, 12 attempts, 164 yards, but you don't need anything more from him than that, especially in a game like this where we've got the lead and we're not having to climb back from being behind like we were in the Texas game. And you go out there and you just make good decisions. Don't try to force the football into tight windows when we don't need it to happen. You've got a really good run game behind you. I think we had close to 200 yards rushing, but 10, 12 attempts from a guy like this reminds me of teams, you know, from Coach Saban's early years, when you're not asking the quarterback to go out there and be the game changer. You don't need somebody that's out there throwing for 300 yards to win these ball games, because you got a great combination of a defense. You've got a good running game to support you. You go out there and you be, like you said, efficient, and that's what he was. We'll take 10 or 12 for 164 every single week with no turnovers when you've got everybody else around you playing extremely well.
Great performance by Alabama. Again, a 40-17 win at Mississippi State on Saturday. If you'd like to join us on the show tonight, give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing hotline. The number 877-202-BAMA. We invite your phone calls as we look forward to what's coming up on Saturday between Alabama and Texas A&M, plus talk about the start to the season for Alabama. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
They'll shift to tight end to the right side and bring a wide receiver to that side as well. 2 on the play clock as they snap it. Pass deflected, intercepted. Bama's got it at the 25. Still on their feet. 10, 5, touchdown Alabama. Chris Braswell with the pick on the deflection from Jamarian Latham, and the Crimson Tide takes a 13-0 lead.
Our first question tonight brought to you by Alabama 811. To help prevent injuries, outages, and loss of life, call 811 or visit al811.com. Before you dig, it is free. It is simple. It is the law. Great to see all the interceptions we saw, including that first one, a pick 6 by Chris Braswell, Jamarian Latham. A huge reason why.
Yeah, it was. He got, you know, Coach Saban talked about the fact that we bringing in a blitz from the boundary and dropping Chris Braswell into coverage caused a little confusion for Will Rogers. You got Latham in his face, gets a ball tipped. shift. And then Braswell coming away with a touchdown was a shocker to everybody. But you need those, a few years ago, it was one of those teams where you don't have to, like we talked about a minute ago, you don't have to ask a lot out of your quarterback, and your offensive production doesn't have to be anything that's out of this world, because we had a defense that created so many turnovers, and not only turnovers, but turnovers into touchdowns. And that's the first touchdown, I think, non-offensive touchdown that we've had this season. And hopefully it's a start for more, because this team is going to need that kind of production from this defense. Maybe not always touchdowns, but at least creating turnovers. And I think we've had a few this year. Obviously, we had 3 interceptions this past weekend, but when we get into the stretch of this SEC gauntlet of a schedule that we've got coming up, it's going to be something that we're going to need to create more of, and not commit turnovers ourselves. And that's getting extra drives in each and every single week is something that we're always going to take advantage of. But I thought it was a great play, great guy, great from all around, from all the turnovers that we were able to create. Really stymied Will Rogers and this Mississippi State offense.
Yeah, great interception there for Chris Braswell. Also, Caleb Downs had one, and then Jahad Campbell, an interception. He was also the leading tackler, and we know he's being asked to do a lot right now for this football team without Deontay Lawson.
Yeah, that was a big fill-in for Jahad Campbell. I thought he did a great job. Him and Trez Marshall. I thought, Trez Marshall's a guy that's older. He's a transfer over from Georgia. He's got a lot of experience. Jahad Campbell hasn't really seen the field that much prior to this season. It's a big deal to ask him to step in and play in absence of Deontay Lawson. It's a huge miss that we don't have him back. Hopefully he's healthy and can come play for us this next weekend. But it's good experience for Jahad Campbell. And you go out there and you see he's got the production that he had. It's only going to continue to build his confidence, where we can throw some different packages out there with different linebacker groups. But I thought Trez Marshall did a phenomenal job as well. He's a guy that showed up, and like Coach Saban said, nothing rattles him. It's good. You can kind of tell. And whenever mistakes are made, and he referenced a few of those mistakes early in terms of making sure that we've got guys lined up in the right place, or making sure our gaps are covered when they're doing a lot of shifting in the backfield. He did a pretty good job, except for a couple different plays. It was good to see both of those guys. I thought they both played extremely well.
For Trez Marshall, transferring from Georgia to Alabama, is it kind of like Henry To'oTo'o when he came from Tennessee, right, to Alabama? Coach Pruitt was his coach at Tennessee, so similar defensive system to what Coach Pruitt had at Alabama. And I imagine some of Kirby Smart's defense is still something familiar to him.
Yeah, absolutely. You know that those guys are running a lot of the basic concepts, same concepts. They're just going to have different names that they call this defense. And so that's probably the biggest transition that they have to get used to, is just what was it called at Georgia, what's it called now. And To'oTo'o did a great job of understanding. The biggest thing for these guys when they show up is, did they learn the defense where they were previously in terms of understanding the concepts that we're trying to run, not just memorizing plays? And I think with both Henry To'oTo'o and Trez Marshall, they understand the concepts. You can tell, because you can't just jump into this type of a defense and understand exactly what we're trying to do from a schematic standpoint if you were just trying to memorize every single page in the playbook instead of the concepts, if that makes any sense. These guys seem that they've got it really. It was a lot easier transition. It was the same for when I went to New York, trying to make a team at the Jets. Their defense was the same concepts of what we ran at Alabama. So when I showed up to camp, it was really easy transition for me, because I knew what they were trying to do. It was just a matter of the verbiage of what they called each play. So it definitely speeds up the learning curve. And then you've got a guy like Caleb Downs, who's never been around this type of a defense. He's starting as a freshman, and he understands, and he's picking up on this defense extremely quick. I've only known one other guy that really could play as fast as he did when that was Rashad Johnson. I mean, early when Coach Saban first got there, he learned the defense so fast, he was telling everybody around him what to do. And it seems that Coach Saban has that same kind of confidence in Caleb Downs, and he's played extremely well. I think it's probably the first week in a long time that he's not the leading tackler for this defense, but he did have the interception this week. So he continues to play well. We're going to continue to need him to continue to play the same way.
Yeah, just one off the tackle lead. It was Jahad Campbell with 14. Caleb Downs right behind that with 13, including 5 solo tackles. Now, that was tops in this football game for the Crimson Tide. And no surprise, again, he's SEC Freshman of the Week.
Yeah, this kid is special. We had a lot of pressure going into this season of the expectations of what he was going to be like. Everybody said, maybe it's the next Minkah Fitzpatrick. And through 5 games into this season, he's lived up to the bill. And it's, he had a few moments where early, especially in that Texas game, where he wants to get involved in the play. He comes downhill. He likes to play in the box. You can tell he's more of that strong safety type position. But for the way that he's played through 5 games has been impressive, and he's doing it consistently. I mean, this is a guy that loves to get into the film room. He likes to learn like what he's supposed to be doing, and with all the distractions that these kids have coming in to college football nowadays, this guy knows there's one goal in mind. It's continue to get better as a football player, and he's trying to play at the next level. And he shows it by his dedication to watching film, and he's very inquisitive. He likes to ask Coach Saban a lot of questions from what I've been told. So he's very impressive.
It's a good start to the season for the Crimson Tide. Alabama off to a 2-0 start in SEC play again. Texas A&M right around the corner on Saturday. PNC Bank is pleased to be back this season with the PNC Achievers. Throughout the collegiate year, PNC Bank will salute both academic and athletic excellence through its proud partnership with the Crimson Tide. Again, to join us, give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline at 877-202-BAMA. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
To the right. Snap. Milroe looking, firing. Man is there. Nyblack catches it. First down. Out of bounds. In-state territory. Stopping the clock with 3:27 to go in the half.
Tonight, not only do we invite your phone calls, but also you can submit your question to us on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN, brought to you by AOL.com, your source for SEC sports. The Crimson Tide, again, winners in Starkville this past Saturday, now turning their attention to the Texas A&M Aggies, who Cory Reamer starting to play some pretty good football.
Yeah, they are, and you saw they've had Connor Wigman goes down at quarterback for Texas A&M, and they've got the one loss so far against a Miami team. And a lot of people, I think, are just trying to figure out who really is good in college football this year. Who are the teams that are going to really rise to the top at the end of the season? And not many people expected Miami to be one of those teams that were in the conversation. And what you've seen from this Miami team is that they're pretty impressive. I mean, this was a tough game for Texas A&M to go down to Miami, and they gave them all they wanted. Now you got Max Johnson stepping in at quarterback for Texas A&M, and Bobby Petrino seems to really be dialing up this offense. I think it was a great hire. Didn't know how these two guys were really going to mesh with each other, in terms of if they were going to let Petrino actually call some offensive plays, but it seems like they are. And this Texas A&M offense has a lot of weapons. This is a team that has recruited at a very high level over these last few years, and Jimbo's doing a good job of getting talent in there and then realizing that he needs to bring in some help on the offensive play call inside of the ball. This is going to be a tough test because they're a good team, and looking around the SEC, who's still, the undefeateds in each division, and who's going to be really emerging for the West in terms of who's going to represent the West in Atlanta. I'm not going to say that this is that make or break game for Alabama or Texas A&M, but this is definitely a big one. Whoever comes out as the winner in this weekend's game is definitely going to have a leg up in the rest of the Western Division to make it to Atlanta. There's a lot of we're watching the game right here, Ole Miss and LSU. We saw this past weekend was a great game, and Ole Miss finds a way to win that ball game against an LSU team that everybody was expecting to be the team that battled Alabama and Texas A&M to represent the West. We still got to play those guys. There's a lot of football left to be played. And we've seen how this has all worked out. A lot of teams with losses that we were really not expecting to have losses in this conference. So it's going to be a good test for us this weekend to see what we're really made of. We're going to know a lot more about this Alabama football team come next week. Yeah,
that's certainly a tough one for LSU because at the same time, kind of like our Tennessee game last year, you love what the offense was able to do.
Yep.
The defensive side of the ball giving up over 50 points, very frustrating.
Yeah, and I just don't think you'd expected that from you never expect that from an LSU team. They're always historically known, like Alabama, as being those defensive juggernauts. Those guys go out there and get stops, and they don't give up points at that kind of a clip. But you got to give a lot of credit to Lane Kiffin. I mean, after he comes to Tuscaloosa, it's his kind of a Super Bowl game. You always wonder, how saw him last season. He loses 5 straight after losing to Alabama at home. How is Ole Miss going going to bounce back after that loss against Alabama last week. And you got to give a lot of credit to that team and that coaching staff for getting them ready to play and really putting it to, like you said, an LSU defense that has so many guys across the board. You call them dudes, just guys that can play football, a lot of talent. With Harold Perkins, one of the guys that people expected to be one of the best players in college football this year. When you start hanging numbers, 50 points on that LSU defense, you're doing something.
Certainly are. It was a crazy day of college football on Saturday, but it did include a win for the Crimson Tide against Mississippi State. 40-17 was the final in Starkville. Tonight we're hanging out in Baumhower's Victory Grill here in Vestavia Hills, where they are ready for football, fun, and great food with the special Big Game Headquarters menu. Get hooked on their delicious all-new lemon garlic salmon and the new char-grilled flat iron Callaway steak with the signature shrimp etouffee. Baumhower's legendary fun, legendary food. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
In the backfield, Niblack and Brooks are wide left. They bring Niblack in tight to the left side. From the pistol, Milroe hands it off. McClellan whoops into the end zone. Touchdown, Alabama. Jace McClellan.
If you want to be part of tonight's Crimson Tide Rewind show, submit your question to us on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN. Just search for the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and that's brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports. Just heard that highlight, Chris Stewart on the call of a Chase McClellan touchdown. We're going to have a very Texas backfield coming up on Saturday for Alabama at Texas A&M. You have Jalen Milroe from Katy, Texas, Jace McClellan from Aledo, Texas. So imagine a lot of friends and family will be there to watch them against the Aggies.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those games that everybody. It's kind of like when we played Texas earlier. There's a lot of pride for a lot of the guys that are on this roster because they were all heavily recruited by both of those schools. Texas A&M and Texas ended up choosing to go to Alabama, and there's probably some animosity for some of those guys that are on the other teams' rosters about them leaving. Probably some guys they played with growing up. Probably some really good friends over there. So you always want to make sure that you show up when there's a little extra motivation for some of these players that have some Texas roots of making sure that they come out of there with a victory because they don't want to have to go home for the holidays and have to listen to it during the off season. So this is going to be one of those weeks, just like like anything else. We all have a lot of guys from Louisiana, Texas, Florida. They're from all over the place. They always take pride when you're playing your hometown team. Hopefully it's just something they don't get too caught up in. You don't want to focus on that at all, but go out there and definitely put out your best performance.
And of course, Jalen Milroe has played on the road before. He took over for Bryce Young's injury last year against Arkansas, but this was the first time this past Saturday we got to see him start a road game in the SEC, and it seemed like he handled the cowbells and everything pretty well. We know the noise is going to be there coming up on Saturday as well at Kyle Field.
Yeah, we've seen him on the road before, and it's this was a good test for him on the road. We've seen him at home, and he's had moments at home when it's gotten exciting that maybe it's maybe affected a little bit of his play, but I thought this past Saturday he did a great job of handling all the noise, blocking it all out, and playing his best ball. I thought he played extremely well. I thought he made some great decisions. He didn't, like we said earlier, he didn't really try to force anything. His accuracy was a lot better this week than it has been in the past. He seems to just have a little bit more confidence when he's throwing the football, and he's not trying to do more than he really needs to do. The only thing that I would say that he's got to be careful of, especially when you're on the road, not holding on to the football for just a little bit too long. There's moments in the game from last weekend, even when he's out there scrambling, you can tell he's trying to make a play with his feet. He really needs to just chuck that ball to the sideline and get it out of his hands and not take the sacks. And we've seen a few games where he's really trying to extend plays, ends up taking 2 to 5 yard losses. But what that does at home versus what it does on the road is it gets the fans involved. When you are tackling a guy behind the line of scrimmage and causing losses, it only brings that crowd noise up a few decibels, and you don't want to give them any ammo to get any louder than it's going to be, because this is one of the toughest places to play. This is a fan base that cares a lot about their football team, and they're into it from start to finish. You definitely don't want to add any fire, fuel to this fire going into this weekend.
And this is a really good defense too, as Coach David talked about.
Yeah, and this matchup that we're going to have this weekend against Texas A&M's defensive front is going to be completely completely different than what we saw this past weekend against Mississippi State. I think they had, Mississippi State had a couple guys across their defensive line that 230, 240. We can take care of with the bodies that we got up front. It's easy for us to take care of. Now, what they did differently this past weekend that we're probably not going to see as much of from Texas A&M is they're running a lot of stunts. There's a lot of movements going on up front. The only way you get guys that are smaller on your defensive line to be effective is to run a lot of games, try to confuse your offensive line, get a guy that doesn't really understand his responsibilities, and you have a guy break free. This group that we're going to see, this front defensive line from Texas A&M is probably, I would say, one of the best in the country in terms of talent level. And it's not just how fast they are, but it's speed and size that they bring. And this is going to be probably easily the toughest test since Texas that we've seen for this offensive line so far. They're going to have to be ready to go. There was a couple times where, some missed assignments that came on Saturday, and this offensive line unit played extremely good. That's 2 games in a row. They've really put a good performance together. But we're not going to be able to allow a lot of sacks. We got to be able to, and Jalen Milroe can help that situation by, like we said, not holding on to the football. When he starts to feel that pressure, if you've got a lane to take off and run, you got to take it. You can't stand back there and take sacks. And if you don't have any options, you got to throw that football away and live to fight another down because this group's going to be getting after him. They know what the strength of his game is, and they're going to be coming after him from start to finish.
And one other thing we know the Crimson Tide continue working on in practice, trying to get to the game field snaps, making sure we have accurate snaps each and every play.
Yeah, and this is it's a hard one to figure out what exactly is going on there. But, I always laugh, and I've made the joke so far. I made it earlier today that, I think we need bad snaps every day, every down, because some of our most productive plays have come on some bad snaps. It's like you get Jalen Milroe's got to be fumbling around for the football, and nobody really knows what's going on. He runs around, makes plays with his feet, finds guys wide open, because when the defense sees that, the ball's on the ground, they kind of zone in on that in the backfield, and the DBs and linebackers are like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Are we going to get it? And they lose who they're actually in coverage. And so it creates an opening for these guys, for Jalen to find some open guys running downfield. So in all seriousness, though, it's something that we've got to clean up. And Seth McLaughlin's done a great job playing center, but obviously there's some miscues going on, just a little bit of focus that he's got to make sure that he gets the ball back there. For a guy like Jalen Milroe, too, the last thing you want to have to be doing when you're trying to do so much of keeping your eyes downfield, making sure you've got your checks in place, is have to worry about where that football is. A lot of quarterbacks don't even have to look at the football when it's snapped back to them because they know it's going to be in the right place every single time. And that allows them to really focus on seeing if the safeties are rolling down, or they're dropping into cover 2. What are the corners doing? It makes his progressions a lot easier when he's not having to look for that football and then have to get his head back up and see what's going on downfield. It makes it a lot easier on him when he doesn't have to worry about that. So hopefully it's something that we can continue to get cleaned up. I know it's a tough on a center when you've got big boys standing right over you and you're trying to make sure that you get your blocks right. But we got to get that fixed.
Absolutely. The Crimson Tide again taking on the Texas A&M Aggies coming up on Saturday at 2:30. Our radio coverage will start at 11:30 across the network. This show brought to you by the Alabama Department of Public Health, who reminds all Tide fans to stay up to date with all recommended vaccinations. Flu season is here, and COVID-19 continues to affect our community. Don't wait, vaccinate. When we come back, we'll be hearing from Coach Saban from his Monday press conference. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
41-40. There's the snap. Milroe looking. Steps up in the pocket. 10. Bounces right 5. Towards the end zone. Touchdown, Alabama. Ball got knocked loose late, but he'd already crossed the goal line. Crimson Tide with the score on the initial signal. Now they're trying to uncover the pile.
You have a taste for winning? Dreamland Barbecue offers the triple threat: dine-in, carry-out, and catering. Dreamland Barbecue, ain't nothing like them nowhere. Proud supporter of the Crimson Tide. As Alabama starts this week of preparation for Saturday's game against Texas A&M, it was Coach Saban meeting with the media earlier today in Tuscaloosa again, looking ahead to this Saturday against the Aggies.
We're playing a really good team this week, so it's going to be really important, I think, that they're playing as well as they played all season long. They've gotten better and better since, the early game. And, they got a lot of good players. They're really good on defense. Jimbo does a really good job with them on offense. They got some really good skilled players. So it's going to be really important for us to have the kind of intensity that we need to have throughout the week in practice. You know, it's almost like, hey, we're going to challenge you this week in practice because it's going to be hard in the game. And you need to be locked in all week long, and you need to be ready for the challenge that you're going to get when you play against a good team on the road in a really tough environment. So, you know, this team is, you know, leading the conference in defense. They're very good up front on defense, very difficult to run the ball against. And, you know, they score a lot of points. And, you know, the combination of those two things make them a really, really good team. So this is going to be a real challenge for us.
And that was Coach Saban earlier today with his Monday press conference in Tuscaloosa. This season, stay cool with a free non-alcoholic drink of your choice when you purchase a limited edition Alabama Yeti. These vintage Yeti cups are only available at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Elevate your game day with Yeti. You're listening to Crimson Tide Rewind live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Keep the drive alive. 3 wideouts right, 1 left. Single set back to the right of Rogers. Looking. He's going to go down.
Time to take a look at the prescription for success. It's presented by Payless Drugs. Payless Drugs, your locally owned family pharmacy with 4 locations here in Birmingham. Payless can handle your prescriptions, over-the-counter solutions, and home delivery. Payless at mynewpharmacy.com. What is that prescription for success for the Crimson Tide this Saturday?
Oh man, we got a lot to cover here. This is a game that we're really going to have to protect Jalen Milroe. We've got a defensive front like we just talked about. DJ Durkin is a great defensive coordinator who knows how to dial up pressure and bring a lot of different various looks that are going to try to cause some confusion up front on some pass protection. And this is an opportunity for Jalen Milroe to really show that he's growing and continue to get better each and every single week, trying to improve on the decision making that he's going to have to make this next weekend, because this past weekend against Mississippi State, he had a lot of time in the pocket. He didn't have to rush a lot. He seemed to be pretty clean with not a lot of pressure. This week, it's going to be a lot faster. They just have a lot of different guys, and they're going to bring a different pressure package and try to get him off of his game, and he's going to have to be processing things a lot quicker than what we saw this past weekend. So it's going to be big for this offensive line to be able to communicate and make sure that we've got everything taken care of, and we're picking up blitzes as they come with running backs and with just the front 5 guys. But Jalen Milroe is going to have to be a guy that really makes some decisions pretty quickly. Take off and run with your feet, and don't try to force things. You know, we've got to make plays with our arm, especially in a game like this. We need him to be able to throw the ball downfield, but he's just got to do it in a timely manner where he's not trying to force too much. And on the other side of the football, we're going to have to get after Max Johnson. This is a guy that, even though he is the backup behind Connor Wigman, he's a guy that's got a lot of experience. A guy comes over from LSU. He's been around a bunch of different programs. He's got a lot of experience. And what we've seen from him so far, really, I don't know if there's that much of a drop-off between Wigman and Johnson. And so we're going to have to really get after him and cause him, like we did this weekend, to create some turnovers. And we're going to have to do that with our front. And you're seeing Dallas Turner really start to turn a corner for this defensive line unit. He's really starting to figure out how to get after these guys and really affect the pocket and create some tension for those quarterbacks. And, you know, it's going to be loud on Saturday. We got to be able to control the noise. It's going to be a fun environment.
It really will be. Again, it's Alabama and Texas A&M coming up this Saturday at Kyle Field in Bryan College Station, Texas. This show, Crimson Tide Rewind, is presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, who reminds Bama fans, don't wait, vaccinate. For more information, visit alabamapublichealth.gov/IMN. We'll talk more about the Crimson Tide and the Aggies when we return for our final segment. That's up next as you listen to the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. What's on tap next for Bama is brought to you by Yellowhammer Brewing. Hit your stride with a refreshing Yellowhammer beer. It's now at Bryant-Denny Stadium and stores near you. Again, next up, Jimbo Fisher leading the Aggies against Crimson Tide at Kyle Field coming up on Saturday. Our coverage will start at 11:30 in the morning coming up this week. Kickoff scheduled for 2:30 p.m. Central. The game will be presented by Beatbox. And then looking ahead just a little bit, we learned earlier today that Alabama's homecoming matchup against the Arkansas Razorbacks on October 14th will kick off at at 11 a.m. So that means Cory Reamer will talk to you at 8 o'clock for our coverage starting in a couple weeks.
Getting it started early. I like it. I don't remember the last time we had an SEC conference game at 11 o'clock, but we'll take it. You know, we saw Arkansas had Texas A&M this past weekend and really gave them a pretty good fight, getting them ready. Just beat them down a little bit, but unfortunately came away with a loss for that Arkansas Razorback team. But that should be a fun one. It's always a good matchup when we get Arkansas in town.
Well, always a good matchup. Really recently in the last two meetings against Texas A&M, plenty of drama going down the last plays. Obviously, the Aggies with the game-winning field goal in Bryan-College Station back in 2021, and then last year it came down to the wire. Crimson Tide got that critical pass deflection to end the game in an Alabama win. Do you expect a close game again this year?
You know, I think this is, you know, last year, even though it was close, and we had Jalen Milroe as our quarterback last season, and unfortunately we saw a few turnovers from him in that game that really kept it a lot closer from a Texas A&M team that did not have a great season, but they always seem to show up whenever we have this matchup. I guess it's a different, you know, Jimbo just finds a way to motivate this team to really show up and play pretty well against this Alabama team. This year, I think it's a different story. You know, last year it was Bryce Young, Will Anderson, and we had a lot of talent and we had a good team, and Texas A&M was really struggling. This year, it seems like Texas A&M has really started to figure a lot of things out. I think this is going to be a physical matchup, and this is going to be a really tough test for Alabama, even though not that it hasn't been, but in a different way, if that makes any sense. There's a lot more on the line for this game in terms of the SEC West and Texas A&M's aspirations to be that team that emerges from the West. They got us at home, and Alabama is still, you know, looking pretty good from a West standpoint as well. There's a lot more on the line for this matchup, and I expect it to be a pretty good contest. This is just going to be a tough game. I expect a lot of physical back and forth game, you know, points being scored, hopefully more for the Alabama side, but I expect it to be pretty physical.
And it's like we talked about with Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. It's kind of a if not now win moment for this Texas A&M program with Coach Fisher.
Yeah, there's been a lot of pressure on Coach Fisher and this Texas A&M staff over the last few years. A lot of it, you know, as well as he's recruited, people just have going into every single season. It just seems that the expectations are high for these Texas A&M teams, and he just hasn't been able to deliver so far. He has got a win against Coach Saban, but you know he hasn't been able to really do much more than that with these as much talent as he has and as much support as he has from the fan base and the boosters at that program. A lot more is expected out of him, and this is that moment for him. I mean, he's got, you know, unfortunately, he's got a loss already against a good Miami team, but we all know that how the playoffs work. We see a one-loss SEC team, if they're able to run the gauntlet and win the SEC, the conference in Atlanta, they're getting a pass into this playoff team, and this is that moment. There's a lot of pressure that's going to be put on Jimbo Fisher to start winning these ball games, because if not, then they're going to maybe look past, you know, who's going to be the next guy up for those Texas A&M squad, because they're tired of losing and not playing in Atlanta for a championship.
And they really don't like Texas and Oklahoma joining this league.
Yeah, I mean, your time's running out. You know, time's running out. Now you've got two more teams that have the same recognition, and being able to recruit in the state of Texas is only going to create a little bit more struggle for them to continue to recruit at the high level when you got these two teams coming in.
It's going to be fun. We'll talk to you Saturday.
Looking forward to it. Roll Tide.
That's Cory Reamer. I'm Roger Hoover. If you missed any portion of tonight's show, catch it on demand on the Alabama Insider Podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. For Jerry Kelly back at our Learfield studios, plus here at Baumhower's our engineer Todd Robbins. Again, with Cory Reamer, I'm Roger Hoover saying thank you for listening. Our coverage from Bryan-College Station will start at 11:30 on Saturday. Until then, roll Tide, roll.